Today we're making piroshki with 3 different fillings. The one on your left is a pea filling, the one in the middle is cabbage and egg, and the one on the right is a potato filling. For your dough, you want 1 cup of warm whole milk. You don't want it too hot. A little bit warmer than your body temperature is good. And to that you're going to add 1 teaspoon of white granulated sugar and 1 package of active dry yeast. And I'm just going to give this a quick stir and let it stand for a few minutes. And this is enough to make about 12 piroshki, so if you want to make more, you can double the recipe. In a large bowl, I have 3 cups of all-purpose white flour, to which I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of salt, and I'm using kosher salt. You can use any kind of salt, but don't use iodized salt, because the iodized salt will interfere with the yeast and your dough rising. I also want to add 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil, 1 egg, and the milk and yeast and sugar mixture. Now I'm going to knead this together with my hands. If you have a stand mixer, feel free to use it. And I will be adding more flour, but I'm going to do so slowly. I'm going to start with a 1/4 cup, and it might take anywhere between a 1/4 cup and 3/4 cups. And I'll show you what the dough is supposed to look like when it's done. So this is what you want your dough to look like. I doubled the recipe because I'm making a lot of piroshki today, so your ball of dough is going to be smaller, but you want it to have a little bit of give like this. You want it to be nice and flexible and not stick to your hands anymore. You just slowly add more flour. While it's still a little sticky, you can dump it on your work surface as long as it's floured, and then slowly add a little bit of flour at a time until it stops sticking to you and your work surface. So now I'm going to put this in a bowl. I have a little bit of oil in here, so I'm going to put it in, roll it around, make sure it's coated. I'm going to put some saran wrap and a towel over it, and I'm going to put it someplace warm to rise. I like to turn on my oven, turn on the broil, and turn it on for about a minute, and then turn it off and leave the light on, and that's a great place for your dough to rise. So here's my dough, and it's way more than double in size. I had it in there for over an hour, but it doesn't matter, it's all fine. I'm going to flour my work surface, dump it out, and I'm going to cut it up into between 10 and 12 equal pieces. So I shaped my dough into a log, and I cut it halfway down the middle, and you can use a knife for this if you don't have one of these. And then I'm going to cut this in half, and then each one of these into 3, and that will give me about 12 equal pieces. So now I'm going to take my 12 pieces, and I'm going to roll them into balls, and then I'm going to use a rolling pin to roll them out into circles. And this is how I form the balls. I just kind of stretch them over and pinch them at the bottom there. Just want a smooth surface here. Just like that. I just want to mention that when you dump your dough out on your work surface, it will deflate. Don't freak out. It's supposed to do that. Okay, so now we have our little balls, and all you want to do is just use a rolling pin and flatten them out. Try to keep them round. You can just keep turning them and pushing down on your rolling pin. For your pea filling, you want to take 1 pound of yellow split peas, and you can either soak them overnight or do a quick soak method, which is to boil them and turn them off and then let them stand for about an hour and a half, and then you cook them. You can cook your peas either with a ham hock or a smoked turkey leg, or if you want to leave it vegetarian, then you don't have to. All you're going to do then is use some smoked paprika if you want the smoky flavor. I cooked mine with a turkey leg, but I'm going to use some of the smoked paprika anyway. And here I have some caramelized onions, and I'm going to add them to taste. I'm not going to use all of these in here. I'm also going to use them in another recipe. So you just add caramelized onions to taste. I cooked my peas for about 45 minutes, but you just want to check them when they're soft enough to mash. That's when they're ready. So I drained them and then I mashed them with 2 tablespoons of butter, just like you would mash your mashed potatoes. And now I'm just going to mix in the paprika and the caramelized onions. Now the key to caramelized onions is to cook them over a low to medium flame for a long time. You don't want to cook them too fast. You don't want them to, get burned and black, because then they'll get bitter. I just want to add that once you've cooked your peas and drained them, I put them back in the pot that I cooked them in, and I mashed them in the pot, and then I cooked them a little bit longer just to get rid of a little of the excess moisture, because you want your filling to be like a paste. And I used my hand to mix in the onion right now, because with the fork it was kind of getting messy, so you want it to look like this. And the other thing is when you're cooking it, if you're cooking it with a smoked meat, don't salt the water, because the smoked meat is salty in itself. You can always add a little bit of salt once it's done cooking. If you're not using a smoked meat, then you could salt your water a little bit. I just want to show you one more thing. The caramelized onions, if you can see, I have the oil that I cooked them in here too. And when you're adding them, you can add them with a little bit of the oil. It helps to make your filling a little bit more moist. For your potato filling, you're going to cook some potatoes. And then you just mash them with a little bit of butter, salt, and pepper to your taste, just like you would mashed potatoes, but you don't add any other ingredients, just salt, pepper, and butter. And you just want it to form like a paste like this. And then I have caramelized onions here in their oil, and I'm just going to add them to this to taste and mix it all together, and that's your potato filling. So this is what your potato filling looks like once you've mixed in the onion. And I'm sorry that I don't have an amount for you. I probably have about 3 cups of potato here. I'm not sure if it's going to be too much for the amount of dough that I'm making, but all of these fillings are yummy to just eat alone if you have some left over. For your cabbage filling, you're going to saute a half a head of cabbage. I shredded it. And you want to add about 1/8 of a cup of water, 2 tablespoons of butter, and salt and pepper to taste. The 1/8 of a cup of water might seem like very little, but the cabbage is going to let out a lot of its own juice. You want to saute this over a high flame for just a few minutes. You don't want it to get mushy. You want to retain a little bit of that green. So you just keep stirring it, and you want to keep a little bit of that crunch. So maybe 2 minutes, and then you're ready to take it out of the pan and put it in a bowl. So while your cabbage cools, you want to hard boil 6 eggs and chop them up. And then I have a whole bunch of scallion or green onion here that I've chopped up. I think there was about 6 of them here, but you can go heavier or lighter. And some fresh dill. And then once the cabbage is cool, I'm just going to mix all of this together, and that's going to be our cabbage filling. So this is what your cabbage filling looks like once you mix all the ingredients together. And now for the dough. Now make sure you don't use too much flour in your work surface. You don't want your dough to dry out. And then you have a circle that's about this big, and it doesn't matter, it can be bigger or smaller. Don't stress, it doesn't have to be perfectly round. This is about the thickness that you want. Not too thin, because you don't want the filling to rip through the dough. And now I'm going to put, I don't know, about 2 or 3 tablespoons of the filling in, as much as you can get in, so that you can still seal this circle shut. And now you're just going to fold it over and pinch it shut. Make sure that you get a tight seal here. Make sure you don't get any of the filling in the spots where you're pinching it shut. You might want to keep a paper towel nearby, a moist one, so you can wipe your hands in case you get the filling on your hand. Make sure that this is really nice and tight, because you don't want it to come open when you're frying it. And now I'm going to put them seam side down on a parchment lined baking sheet while I do the other ones. I just want to show you how I do it with the pea filling. It's the same procedure here. I think maybe it might take a little more filling than the one with the cabbage, because it's a firmer filling. So just want to make sure that you can still seal it shut. And there we go. Pinch. pinch. So my piroshki have risen for about half an hour, and now I'm going to heat some oil in a pan. I probably have about 1.5 inches here. You want the oil hot, but not smoking hot. I'm just going to stick this wooden spoon in, and you see how it's bubbling? That means the oil is ready. So now I'm going to put about 4 of them in here at a time. You don't want to crowd your pan. You don't want to cook them on a very high flame because you don't want them to burn outside and stay raw inside. Once they get golden on one side, you flip them over, and I'll show you that. So when they get to this color, you want to flip them over and get the other side the same color. And then you want to prepare a plate that's lined with paper towels to drain them on. I just want to let you know that the amount of filling, each individual one, like the potato by itself, the peas by themselves, is probably enough for one batch of dough. So if you were to make all 3 fillings, you would at least need 3 batches of the dough. Here they are, guys, all finished, our beautiful piroshki. I hope you enjoy.